When I first retired, people kept asking me the same question. So, how does it feel to finally relax? To have all the time in the world? And I'd smile, nod, say the polite thing. It feels good, peaceful, slower. But the truth is, retirement didn't just bring peace. It brought space. Space to think. Space to feel. Space to discover parts of myself I hadn't looked at in years. And in that space, I developed habits. Quiet ones, personal ones, things I never really told anyone about. Not my kids, not my friends, not even the people closest to me. Not because they're dark or shameful, but because they're mine. Deeply mine. I think many retirees carry these kinds of habits, and we keep them to ourselves. Maybe out of pride, maybe because no one ever asked. But today I want to share 7 of mine with you. Not advice. Not a list of things you should do, just pieces of my life. The real, honest things that shape my days. Some of them might surprise you. Some might feel familiar. Either way, if you've ever wondered what really happens in the quiet corners of retired life, this is for you. Let's begin. Habit 1. I keep a secret spending jar. Most people think that after retirement, spending slows down, and for the most part, it does. I'm not buying suits for the office anymore. I'm not filling up the gas tank twice a week, and I'm certainly not rushing around town like I used to. But even now, there's something comforting about having a little money that's just mine. In the back corner of my garage, hidden behind an old box of tools, there's a jar. Not fancy, not locked up, just a simple glass jar with a few folded bills and some coins. I call it my freedom jar. It started as something small, just a place to drop leftover cash from odd jobs or birthday cards. But over time, it became more than that. It became a symbol of choice. Every Thursday morning, after my walk, I stop by a diner 2 blocks down. I sit at the counter, order a slice of pecan pie and a cup of black coffee. It's not about the food. It's about the ritual. That $7 comes from the jar. Not my bank account. Not my retirement fund. Not a credit card that my kids might look over later. Just my little stash. My private pocket of independence. You see, after you retire, there's a strange shift in control. You spend your whole life working for your family, building stability, managing bills. And then suddenly, people start watching over you. They mean well. Your kids, your advisors, even your doctor. But sometimes it feels like you're being managed. This jar reminds me I still get to choose, not just how to spend a few dollars, but how to hold on to parts of myself that still feel young and spontaneous. I've never told my kids about the jar. I don't think they'd mind. But they might try to refill it, or worse, tell me I don't need it. That would take away the point entirely. It's not about needing. It's about wanting. It's about having something that's not tied to permission or explanation. That diner, that pie, those quiet moments where I sit and watch the world go by. That's my little act of rebellion. My little proof that I'm still very much here, still capable of making small decisions that feel big to me. And if I'm being honest, I think we all need a jar like that. A place where our freedom lives, where no one's watching, no one's judging, and we don't have to explain ourselves. Just a small corner of life that still belongs only to us. Habit 2. I take morning walks, alone on purpose. Most mornings, I'm up before the sun. The house is quiet, the world still feels untouched, and the air is cooler, lighter somehow. I lace up my shoes, grab my worn-out windbreaker, and head out the door. No music, no phone, just me and the early light. My daughter once suggested I join a senior walking group. "You'd get more steps in, Dad," she said, "and you could make new friends." I smiled, thanked her, but inside I knew this walk isn't about steps or social time. It's about solitude. It's about space. When I walk alone, something changes inside me. My thoughts aren't competing with conversation. I'm not being pulled by anyone else's pace. I get to think, really think. Not just about the grocery list or the next doctor's appointment, but about life, about what I've done right, about what I've let slip away, about who I've become now that I'm no longer defined by a title or a paycheck. I replay old conversations in my head. I make peace with people who will never hear my apologies. I whisper forgiveness to those who wronged me, and sometimes to myself. These walks are where I do my quiet healing. They're where I let the past visit me, not to hurt me, but to teach me. There's something deeply sacred about moving your body in silence, the steady rhythm of your feet on the pavement, the soft rustle of leaves in the trees, the occasional bird cutting through the quiet with its song. It becomes a kind of meditation, a moving prayer. And I don't talk about this much because how do you explain that silence has become your therapist? How do you explain that the loneliest part of your day is also the most cherished? Sometimes I see other walkers, couples, groups of retirees chatting. And it's nice. I nod, smile, wave, but I never join. Not because I'm antisocial, but because I've come to value this hour as a form of self-respect. A moment where I'm not a father, not a neighbor, not a patient in someone's chart. I'm just a man who walks. And when I get back home, I feel lighter. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally, as if I've walked off a few extra burdens that didn't belong to me anymore. So no, I'm not lonely when I walk alone. I'm choosing something different. And in a world that often rushes us into company, that kind of choice feels like a small, sacred act. Habit 3. I revisit my regrets and I learn from them. Retirement gives you something you didn't know you were missing: time. And with time comes reflection, not just about what's ahead, but what's behind. I have a box up in the attic. It's an old shoebox, worn at the edges, tied with a piece of string. Inside are letters I never mailed, photos from moments I thought I'd forgotten, even a few keepsakes that carry more weight than they should. I go up there sometimes, not often, but when the mood is right. And I sit with those memories. I pull out the letter I wrote to my brother back in 1986. We hadn't spoken in 2 years. I was too proud. He was too stubborn. I wrote the letter, but I never sent it. He passed away in 1990. I still wonder what might have changed if I had just mailed it. There's a photo in there of a woman I almost married. We were young. The timing wasn't right. Maybe we weren't right. Still, I keep the picture because it reminds me that I was once full of dreams I didn't fully chase. And then there are notes, scribbled plans, old goals, things I meant to do but put off for too long. When I read them now, I don't feel sad. I feel informed. Like these regrets have taught me more about myself than my successes ever did. You see, we're taught to avoid regret, to let the past go. But I think that's too simple. Regret, when faced gently, can be a wise teacher. It shows you what mattered, what still matters. It teaches you how to apologize, how to forgive, how to do better next time, even if that next time is just in how you speak to your grandchild, or how you answer the phone when an old friend calls. I don't tell people about my trips to the attic. They'd think I'm dwelling, but I'm not. I'm honoring, I'm learning, I'm letting my past speak to me without shame. And maybe that's what regret is for, not to punish us, but to polish us, to remind us that we're still growing, still capable of becoming more than we were, even now. Habit 4. I write down what I'm grateful for, but never share it. Gratitude. It's a word people toss around a lot these days. You see it on coffee mugs, bumper stickers, and endless posts online. Be grateful. Practice gratitude. Gratitude changes everything. And maybe it does. But for me, gratitude is quieter than that, more personal, more sacred. Every night, before I turn off the lamp beside my bed, I sit down with a little notebook I keep in the drawer. It's nothing fancy, just a soft-cover journal, worn at the corners, with lined pages and a pen tucked into the spine. And I write 3 things I'm grateful for. No matter what kind of day I've had, good, bad, or somewhere in between, I always find 3. Sometimes it's something small, the way the sun hit the maple tree in the front yard that morning, a warm cup of coffee that actually tasted better because I had the time to enjoy it, a call from my grandson, even if it only lasted 5 minutes. Other times, it's deeper. Forgiveness I finally offered myself for something I've carried too long. A peaceful silence that came over me in the middle of an afternoon nap. The comfort of remembering a good year instead of focusing on a hard one. I never share these entries, not because I'm hiding anything, but because they lose something when spoken aloud. It's like trying to explain why a sunset moved you. Words just don't cover it. Gratitude, for me, is an inward thing. It softens the hard edges of the day. It shifts my focus. It keeps me honest. There are nights I stare at the page longer than I'd like to admit. Some days, it's hard to feel grateful. When the pain in my knees flares up. When I miss the sound of someone's voice who isn't here anymore. When the world feels a little too loud, too fast, too unfamiliar. But even on those nights I write, especially on those nights, because it's usually then that I discover the most unexpected treasures, like the smell of rain, the way my old dog curls up at my feet, or how good it feels just to exhale. I've never told my children about this habit. They might think it's sentimental, or that it's something I picked up from a self-help book. But the truth is, I started doing it out of necessity. After retiring, my days became looser, less defined. Time stretched out in front of me, and it was easy to feel untethered. Writing what I'm grateful for gives shape to my days. It reminds me that life, even now, is still full of gifts. I don't need applause for noticing them. I don't need anyone to read the list or tell me it's meaningful. That's the beauty of private gratitude. It belongs entirely to you. It's a conversation between your soul and the life you're living. And sometimes, when you look back through the pages months later, you realize that the life you thought was ordinary was actually full of quiet, extraordinary moments. So no, I don't post about my gratitude. I don't talk about it over dinner or use it as a moral lecture. I just write it down every night. Because somewhere along the way, I learned that being quietly thankful keeps me from becoming quietly bitter. And that, to me, is worth everything. Habit 5. I give quietly without telling my kids. There's a kind of giving that doesn't need a stage. No ribbon-cutting ceremony, no Facebook post, no tax write-off. Just a quiet choice to make someone's life a little easier without anyone else ever knowing. That's the kind of giving I've come to value most. I started doing it years ago after I retired. The first time was at the pharmacy. A young mother in front of me was counting coins to pay for her son's medication. She was short by $6. I slipped the cashier a 20 and nodded. Put it toward her bill, I said softly. I didn't wait around for a thank you. I just left, and I remember how light I felt walking to my car. Like I had just done something right, something decent, and no one had to know. Since then, I've made quiet giving a part of my life. Sometimes I leave envelopes with grocery store gift cards in the church mailbox. Other times, I send small checks anonymously to a veterans organization that helped my brother years ago. I've paid off a neighbor's overdue electric bill after hearing them worry about it through the fence. They never found out it was me. Why keep it secret? Well, for one, it's not about me. I'm not doing it for recognitions or praise. And second, I don't want to be talked out of it. My kids are wonderful, they really are. But if they knew I was giving money away, they'd worry. They'd say, "Dad, you need to be careful. You're on a fixed income." And they'd be right in a practical sense. But generosity doesn't always ask for practicality. Sometimes it asks for heart. When you've lived long enough, you start to see the holes in people's lives. Not just financial ones, but emotional ones too. You notice the tired eyes of the cashier who's been on her feet since dawn. You hear the worry in your neighbor's voice, even when they pretend everything's fine. And when you've been blessed with just a little more time, more patience, more understanding, you feel a quiet responsibility to share it. The truth is, giving has become one of the most meaningful parts of my retired life. It makes me feel connected, useful, alive, not in a grand headline-making way, but in a human way. In a way that says, you're not alone. Someone out there sees you. And they care. Sometimes I imagine someone opening that gift card and feeling surprised that help came from nowhere. Or that mother at the pharmacy sighing with relief when the medicine was paid for. I don't need to be remembered. I just hope they felt in that moment that the world wasn't as cold as it sometimes seems. And maybe someday when my kids are older, they'll understand. Maybe they'll find the notes I've kept, copies of the checks, little scribbled reminders of who I helped and why. And maybe they'll realize that giving, when done quietly, becomes more than charity. It becomes character. It becomes a way of living with your heart open, even when no one's watching. That's a habit I'll never regret. And it's one I hope they'll carry forward, not because I told them to, but because one day they'll feel that same pull, to give, to care, to show up quietly for someone who needs it. Habit 6. I still plan, even if I might not be there. One of the biggest surprises about retirement is how quiet the calendar becomes. After decades of meetings, deadlines, schedules, and commitments, suddenly, the days stretch wide open. You'd think that would be freeing, and it is to a point. But that freedom can start to feel a little aimless if you're not careful. That's why, even now, I still plan. I plan little things, big things, even things I might never see happen. There's a notebook on my desk, filled with trip ideas. Places I think my family would love to visit someday. I've mapped out a road trip down the Pacific Coast Highway, complete with picnic stops and little diners I've read about. I might never take the drive, but just imagining them laughing in the car. Taking pictures by the ocean brings me joy. In the garage, there's a folder labeled Spring Garden 2026. It has sketches of flower beds, a new layout for the raised vegetables, and a list of perennials I think would do well by the fence. I don't know if my knees will let me do all that digging, but still, I draw. I plan. I dream. My son once asked, "Why do you plan so much, Dad? Shouldn't you just take it easy now?" I laughed, and I told him the truth. Planning doesn't mean I'm ignoring where I am. It means I still see myself as part of the future. It's easy for people to assume that once you reach a certain age, you stop being a participant in what's next. You're supposed to sit back and watch, let the younger ones make the decisions, take the risks, lead the charge. And while I respect that shift, I'm not ready to disappear from the picture just yet. These plans, no matter how small, are my way of staying engaged. I still write out grocery lists, even though I don't mind improvising at the store. I draft notes for birthday speeches I might give. I even jot down menu ideas for Thanksgiving, just in case they ask me to cook one more time. There's something deeply human about imagining what comes next. It keeps the heart soft, the mind awake. It gives the day shape and purpose. Do I always finish what I plan? No. Some ideas stay in the notebook. Some gardens never get planted. But that's not the point. The point is to keep envisioning life, not in a desperate way, not in denial, but in quiet hope. Hope doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't care if you're 70 or 85. It just asks that you stay open, that you stay curious, that you keep reaching, even if your reach is shorter than it used to be. I don't always share my plans with others. Sometimes they'd laugh, sometimes they'd worry, sometimes they'd just shake their heads. But to me, the act of planning is sacred. It's a way of saying, I still matter. I still believe there's more life to come, even if it looks different than before. And in a world that often forgets the value of those in their later chapters, that kind of belief is powerful. Quiet, but powerful. Habit 7. I treasure solitude, and I no longer feel guilty for it. There was a time when being alone scared me. Not the kind of alone where the house is quiet for a few hours. I mean real solitude, the kind that comes when the calendar is empty, the phone doesn't ring, and no one is expecting you. After my wife passed, the silence in the house felt like an echo chamber. Every creak in the floor, every clock ticking, every drawer closing, everything sounded louder without her voice to balance it out. I'd turn the TV on just for the background noise. I'd keep the radio playing in the kitchen long after I'd left the room. Anything to avoid the sound of nothing. But something changed over the years. The silence stopped being a reminder of what was missing. It started to feel like company. Now I look forward to my solitude. I don't see it as loneliness anymore. I see it as space, a kind of mental and emotional breathing room that I never had when I was younger, when every minute was filled with meetings, chores, and people needing something from me. In solitude, I rediscovered simple joys. I hum old songs while I make breakfast. I sit by the window and watch the birds come and go. I cook small meals for myself, taking my time with each step. I take naps without guilt. I sit still, really still, sometimes for 20 minutes, just watching the afternoon light move across the floor. And I don't apologize for it anymore. Our culture doesn't always respect solitude. It praises productivity, busy schedules, full calendars. And even in retirement, people ask, "So, what are you doing these days?" As if rest, reflection, and quiet enjoyment don't count as living, but they do. In fact, I think they're some of the most meaningful forms of living we have left. When I was younger, I used to measure my worth by how much I got done in a day. Now I measure it differently. Did I notice something beautiful today? Did I have a kind thought? Did I treat myself gently? That's enough. I still see friends. I still spend time with my family when I can, but I don't fill my days just to avoid being alone. I embrace it. I protect it. Because in those quiet moments, I feel the most connected to who I really am. Not the version others see, but the man I've become when no one's watching. And maybe that's the most honest version of all. So, no, I don't talk about this habit much. People might worry. They might say, "You should get out more, stay busy, meet people." And I do when I feel like it. But I've also learned that being with myself isn't something to fix. It's something to cherish. Because in the quiet, I've found peace. Not the kind that comes from escape, but the kind that comes from arriving fully in your own life, exactly as it is. You know, I didn't share these 7 habits to impress anyone. I'm not trying to offer life advice or pretend I've figured it all out. Truth is, I'm still learning, still growing, still making peace with things I can't change, and finding joy in the ones I can. These little habits, the secret spending jar, the quiet walks, the garden plans I may never finish, they're not about clinging to the past or escaping the present. They're about living fully in the in-between, the space we rarely talk about, where real life happens once the spotlight fades. Maybe some of these habits sound familiar, maybe some don't. Either way, if they've made you think, or pause, or even smile for a moment, then I'm glad I shared them. Retirement isn't the end of our story. It's just a quieter chapter, written in smaller moments that matter more than we ever expected. If something in this video spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What habits have you picked up that no one knows about? What gives your days meaning? And if this felt like a conversation worth having, I invite you to stay. Subscribe. Because here, we're not chasing noise, we're honoring wisdom. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, you're not alone on this path. We're walking it together.